Hi, thanks for joining me today. I wanted to talk about insurance coverage, property and casualty coverages specifically for restaurants. These are Revolve-style restaurants, and this is a kind of a 101 level, if you will, that pertains to all restaurants. The general liability coverage is the first item we talk about. Now, what we talk about there is bodily injury and property damage to patrons that come on the premises. Good example would be somebody that slips and falls while waiting to get a table, while waiting to be served. Another example would be if they consumed the food product and became ill later on. The medical expenses, potential loss of work associated with that are covered under a general liability policy. There's some specific endorsements that we add on that are relating to restaurants that are really, really unique to those coverages. And I think that, but that's really important, that general liability coverage is the first real strong priority. Liquor liability pertains obviously to those liquor serving establishments. We want to be careful when we have a liquor serving establishment to not only write liquor liability in an amount, let's say, of $1 million limit per claim, but we also want to make sure there's assault and battery included. So if there's any entertainment, or even if there's no entertainment, if there's an issue relative to the bar or the social environment, and an employee of the establishment needs to take and put out somebody, needs to call police, needs to help keep order in the environment. If the patron alleges that they were assaulted as they were shown the door, so to speak, that's assault and battery, and that's an important endorsement or rider onto the liquor liability coverage. Umbrella liability is important as well. We write the umbrella policy over certain underlying policies. What are they? They are general liability and workers' compensation. Sometimes we can write it over liquor liability as well. The umbrella liability, as its name describes, is an additional layer of liability. So let me give an example. Let's say we have $1 million general liability limit and $1 million liquor liability limit. If we have our umbrella sitting over both of those, which we generally want to do, the liability policy now gives $2 million per claim, $1 million on the umbrella, $1 million on the general liability for both general liability and liquor. So now we have $2 million per claim with the umbrella being in place. Generally very inexpensive and an important additional layer of liability. Employment practice liability, or EPLI as the acronym says, wrongful termination, failure to promote, sexual harassment, all the things that happen in an environment between management and employees, employees versus employees. A lot of establishments are surprised to see that's not covered under general liability, and it isn't. So employment practice liability is a very important coverage part for restaurants in particular, but everybody in the hospitality industry in particular. Property coverage, whether we own the building or whether we lease, improvements and betterments, cooking equipment, refrigeration equipment, freezers, walk-in coolers, everything that we have to operate our operation, to keep our operation functional, needs to be insured with a property policy. So we're covering equipment breakdown, we're covering fire, we're covering vandalism, we're covering theft. All those things that can happen to property that you have a financial interest in are covered under a property policy. Auto liability, whether we own or lease, or whether we've got employees driving on our behalf, auto liability is important to cover the establishment. Super critical, particularly very inexpensive depending on the number of employees, and if we don't own a vehicle, if we don't own or lease a vehicle, that coverage can be written very inexpensively, but it's really important. You get involved with valet parking, you get involved with employees driving on behalf of the business to pick up supplies, we need to make sure auto liability is in force. Very, very important coverage. Also extremely important is workers' compensation, work comp. In Massachusetts, state statute dictates that any employer that hires employees, irregardless of the type of employer they are. They could be an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC, a partnership, irregardless. Once they hire employees, they have to have work comp in place. Work comp is going to provide for injuries to employees as well as loss of wages if they're out a certain number of days. Again, covered, required by state statute, so the employer has really no choice in the matter. I hope this helps. Thanks again, and I'm Bruce Thompson. I'm with Sampson Insurance. We hope to hear from you. We'd love to be of service to you. Check us out at www.sampsonins.com.